Welcome back, everyone. I'm so thrilled to have you here for today's explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating astrological placement, one that literally turns the mundane into the extraordinary, and, well, sometimes into an absolute battlefield. We are talking about Mars in the third house. This is a placement that creates a huge, undeniable link between our raw courage, our communication style, and how we handle those everyday interactions. If you've ever found yourself wondering why certain people are just so fiercely protective of their neighborhood, or why a casual chat over a fence can suddenly feel like this high-stakes debate, you are definitely in the right place.
But before we get into the nuts and bolts of how this works, I want you to just pause and ask yourself a really deep question. Is every disagreement worth fighting? It kind of makes you think, doesn't it? When we talk about Mars, we're inherently talking about warrior energy. But as we'll see today, the true test of a warrior isn't just knowing how to fight, it's knowing exactly when to fight. So keep that in the back of your mind as we go along.
Okay, part 1. Mars meets the third house, the recipe for a bold voice.
Let's dive right into this. To really get a grip on this concept, think about what the third house is all about. It represents your immediate world, communication, your neighbors, your siblings, short little trips, and just everyday connections. It's the physical and social environment you're navigating every single day. Now contrast that with Mars. Mars is all about raw energy, aggression, action, and a relentless fighting spirit. So what do you think happens when you drop the ultimate warrior planet straight into the middle of a quiet, everyday neighborhood? You get fireworks. It's this massive injection of heat into the most mundane areas of life.
Because of that collision, someone with this placement is going to have a very bold voice. They have this incredibly strong desire to defend their personal opinions. They literally cannot stomach unfairness, disrespect, or anyone interfering in their business. They're just fundamentally wired to believe that if there's a problem, you address it immediately. You don't just ignore it. And while that gives them amazing courage and confidence, you can probably guess the catch, right? It can also mean that tiny, easily solvable disagreements blow up into something way bigger than necessary.
Which brings us to part 2, the neighborhood battlefield, where small disagreements grow.
Think about these totally relatable neighborhood triggers. A simple offhand comment, a noise complaint, a parking matter, a boundary concern, or just a plain old difference of opinion. For most of us, those are minor annoyances, right? But for someone with Mars in the third house, these things escalate rapidly. And it's because Mars just adds so much heat to the communication. What starts out as a perfectly rational chat about a parking space can turn into a full-blown argument in seconds, mostly because both sides, fueled by that Martian competitive spirit, just desperately need their position to be validated.
To really understand the why behind those triggers, we have to look at their relationship to the immediate environment. Mars in the third house makes a person hyper-aware of what's happening around them. They notice disturbances instantly. And more importantly, they react swiftly when they feel like their comfort, privacy, or rights are being threatened. For them, staying quiet feels like compliance. It feels like accepting an injustice. So they vastly prefer taking immediate, decisive action rather than just sitting back and letting things slide. And that brings us to a very predictable cycle that we see time and time again. Step 1, a temporary inconvenience occurs. Step 2, a strong reaction is triggered. And step 3, which is honestly the most dangerous step, the inconvenience becomes a matter of principle. This happens because Mars doesn't usually pause to measure the size of the battle before charging in. A tiny issue gets a massive reaction. So by turning a temporary annoyance into a stubborn matter of principle, they might win the argument, sure, but they completely lose the peace and quiet they were trying to protect in the first place.
Moving on to part 3, when other planets interfere, the cosmic guest stars.
Now, what's really interesting about this cosmic setup is that planets rarely act alone. The heat of Mars is often twisted or amplified by other planets. Take Mercury, for example. When Mercury gets involved, words literally become a weapon. The person develops these razor-sharp communication skills, but the result? Those harsh words might win the debate today, but they create long-term problems with the neighbors tomorrow. Then there's Saturn. Saturn demands discipline and actually delays the response. So instead of snapping immediately, frustration just builds and builds until it erupts into a much heavier conflict. And finally, Rahu. Rahu is unpredictable. It brings in misunderstandings, rumors, and hidden competition, making rational thinking absolutely crucial before taking any action.
But hey, it's not all harsh words and neighborhood drama. When Venus influences Mars, the person naturally balances that aggression with diplomacy. They still have strong opinions, but they truly want peaceful relationships, proving that firmness and kindness can absolutely exist together. And then we have the moon, which is all about emotional control. A strong moon helps the person separate their feelings from the situation so they can respond thoughtfully. But a sensitive moon, that's going to trigger quick, sharp reactions, because suddenly every single disagreement feels deeply, deeply personal.
Finally, part 4. Choosing your battles wisely, the ultimate test of self-mastery.
So what's the core takeaway here? Well, first off, we have to recognize that Mars in the third house isn't just about creating difficult neighbors. Not at all. This placement brings out incredible positive traits. We're talking leadership, courage, protecting the community, and active problem solving. The exact same fiery energy that starts a petty argument over a fence is the very same energy that drives someone to fiercely protect their community. These folks are usually the first ones to stand up against real unfairness and tackle the problems that everyone else is just too timid to touch.
So the deeper lesson really boils down to a stark contrast. On one side, you have true courage, knowing exactly when to speak up and protect others. On the flip side, you have unnecessary conflict, that exhausting compulsion to react to every single comment and the need to claim victory every time. The wisdom of this placement is all about knowing the difference between those two paths. Not every comment deserves a response, right? Some situations demand that fierce Martian courage, but others literally just need silence.
Ultimately, real strength comes from controlled energy. This placement teaches us that strength isn't just about confrontation or being the loudest voice on the block. A person who can manage their anger and consciously direct their energy actually holds way more power than someone who just needs to win every single argument they stumble into.
So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. Having a strong voice and a fearless mind is an absolute gift, but lasting peace, that requires profound self-awareness. So ask yourself during your everyday interactions, are you proving a point or are you protecting your peace? Sometimes the greatest victory is just protecting your peace. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope this helps you navigate your own neighborhood battlefield with a little more wisdom and a lot more peace. See you next time.